Today, we're taking the first step towards change, and boy, do we need it. So, I wanted to introduce education as my passion, and so are young people and seniors and everyone else that lives here, but I want to introduce my fellow moderators for tonight's conversation. She's from the 10th Ward, a senior at George Washington High School, and a vibrant young woman with a bright future, Aguilet de Santiago. Martin Downs, a recent graduate from Northwestern University. He studied political science and theater, and on the weekends, if you'd like to see him, he's at the Bristol Renaissance Fair. Actually on a game show. Okay, so, Aguilet.
Thank you all for coming tonight. As Alderwoman Garza mentioned, we're here tonight to hear from candidates who are campaigning to be the next governor of Illinois. Tonight, we'll start by allowing the candidates to introduce themselves by sharing a 3-minute opening statement.
After they've all introduced themselves, we will be inviting the candidates to answer some questions covering issues that impact residents of the 10th Ward, the City of Chicago, and the State of Illinois. The candidates will then have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the question, and we're asking the candidates to speak to you directly, the community, and not the fellow candidates.
So, tonight we have with us Senator Daniel Biss. He's a former math professor, current state senator from Illinois' 9th District, and a resident of Skokie, Illinois. We also have J.B. Pritzker. He's a businessman and a lifelong advocate for Illinois' children and their families. Bob Daiber, a public official with over 20 years of experience with a background in education and currently regional superintendent of schools in downstate Illinois. Theo Hardiman, executive director of Violence Interrupters, community organizer, fighting for peace and social change, and resident of Chicago. State Representative Scott Drury. State Representative Scott Drury, state representative for Illinois' 58th District, and a resident of Highwood, Illinois. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pick a name, and that person's going to start with a 3-minute introduction, and then we're going to go to the left. Our timekeepers are right in front of you. They were right, but now they're to the side of you. I apologize. You'll have 3 minutes to give your opening introduction, and we're going to start with, we have this very modern, ingenuous way of picking numbers. Okay. J.B. Pritzker, you're first.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for spending a Tuesday evening listening to a bunch of guys who are trying to become governor. It shows a lot of interest, compassion, and it shows you what Donald Trump and Bruce Rauner have done, that everybody would show up on a Tuesday night. I want to thank Alderwoman Sue Garza and, of course, Carl Camacho for putting this all together. This is pretty amazing. Look, I think maybe I ought to start out by saying, you know, with a wealthy businessman who's a failed president and a wealthy businessman who's a failed governor, you might be asking yourselves, why should you elect a wealthy businessman to be your Democratic nominee for governor, right? Because this election isn't about money, it's about values. It's about what people stand up for their whole lives. I've stood up for children. I've helped to get 230,000 kids school breakfast across the state of Illinois, expanding President Obama's program called No Kid Hungry, so that every kid in low-income school districts across the state can access school breakfast. It's about building the Holocaust Museum, the Illinois Holocaust Museum. More than 50,000 kids every single year go to that museum to learn to fight bigotry and hatred and intolerance, and thousands of teachers go there and take the lessons across Illinois to their classrooms. It's about endowing the Center on Wrongful Convictions, which has stood up for so many people that have experienced a miscarriage of justice in this state. When you read about somebody that spent 5 years or 10 years or 20 years in prison for something they didn't do and they got let out, it's often the Center on Wrongful Convictions that helped them get out. It's about standing up for so many issues across the state that are affecting working families. We need somebody who's going to stand up for working families and put Springfield back on the side of middle-class families and people striving to get to the middle class, and who will put back the safety net in our state. Now, here we are in a location where the Memorial Day massacre occurred. And you all know that there were 10 people who lost their lives fighting for the rights of working people. And it wasn't just their right to organize, although that was enormously important, but also the right to economic opportunity, the right to be heard. You know that I have received the endorsement of 17 individual labor unions. I think I'm the only candidate that's actually received endorsements from labor unions and the statewide AFL-CIO. I'm very proud of that, and it's because I've stood up for working families across Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, as your governor, I'm going to stand up and protect the environment here in the 10th Ward. We've got to make sure that the Koch brothers know they can't spread environmental hazard across this Drury. Economic opportunity, jobs, and making education better for our kids. That's what I've done my whole life. That's what I'm going to do as governor. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Daiber. I'm the downstate candidate running for governor. I'm from Madison County. As was stated, I spent over 20 years in public service in local government. I served in all capacities, from city council, being a township supervisor, 2 terms on a county board, and then elected to be a countywide elected official as regional superintendent, which I'm very proud of. For 38 years, I've devoted my life to public service. 38 years I've devoted my life to public education, which I stand very strong for. 28 of those years, I was a career technical teacher, teaching young men and women skill sets as to how to get a job, how to start a business, how to be successful in life. And most of the kids that I taught were kids that other people didn't want to teach. Okay? They were the students of maybe a little less academic quality, a little bit less academic proficiency. But what they got when they were in class with me was a true class education that helped them be successful in life today. That's something that has been abandoned in our school systems that we need to reinstate, and I as governor will do that. Okay? I also want to tell you, in those years that I was a public school teacher, I'm the only candidate that's ever been president of a local, the only candidate that's ever paid union dues, and the only candidate that's consistently bargained contracts. And I never went to the bargaining table that I didn't take something from it. And I don't ever go to the bargaining table as an administrator that I don't have something to give even in tough times. Because I know what that table's about. I know for a fact this, that in public sector today, our private sector, if you do not have organized labor and you don't have unions, people will not be treated fairly. They will not. They will not have that right to file agreements. Now, I've got something to tell you that probably no one else saw today, but I did. And I'm so pleased with seeing the number of people here, because today I received an award at the Illinois State Fair because my family was named today a Centennial Farm recipient in Illinois. And we've had this farm for 100 years. I still own and operate it. And in that line were many people, and the governor was going through the line shaking hands. And one person after the other, I heard him say this to him: "You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job." And I'm like, this isn't the guy that I know. But when he got to my wife and I and he saw me, he knew he wasn't going to get a compliment. He knew it. So he kind of turned his head, we shook hands, and he went on down the line. So, you know, the reason I'm sharing that is that there are people in Illinois that think he's doing a great job, and that's why I want to be the gubernatorial candidate, because I'm the guy that can beat him. Because I'm the guy that can take votes from Bruce Rauner downstate. Pat Quinn carried no counties, but Cook, I can carry downstate, and I will with your help in Cook County. Thank you very much.
Good part of this forum. Thank you for including the community in this discussion. Thank you for the extraordinary work you do as one of the great progressive fighters in the Chicago City Council, a body that could use another progressive fighter or two, if you ask me. Thank you, Marvin, and I look forward to the discussion and the questions. I could introduce myself for a while. The Alderwoman talked about how I used to teach math, left that world because I saw a country spinning out of control and saw the power that you have when people come together in movements to make change. I could tell you about that transition, the work I've done in the Illinois General Assembly, fighting every single day for the last 6.5 years. But I also think for us to understand what this race is about, it helps to think about what the history of the 10th Ward has looked like. A ward with a history of thriving industrial activity, middle-class union jobs, economic growth, economic opportunity, and as some of those jobs began to leave, our state government and our city government didn't do what it took to fill in the breach. As that disinvestment began to happen and money was pulled out of the neighborhood, through no fault of anyone here, it was the moral responsibility of the state and the city to make sure that we put people to work here, to make sure we put dollars back in the neighborhood, and that didn't happen. And the question that I keep asking myself is, why didn't that happen? Why didn't that happen? Is that because we didn't have any money? Is that because the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago were broke? No. Go downtown, look up in the sky, tell me we're broke. We're not broke. Look at the hedge funds and private equity firms and tell me we're broke. We're not broke. Look at the big manufacturers, the big advertising firms. Look at the Board of Trade. We're not broke. We've made a decision to walk away from neighborhoods across the city of Chicago, neighborhoods across the state of Illinois, because we have a political system that's run by a few, for a few. And what this election is about is taking power back. Bruce Rauner is a catastrophic nightmare who's tearing the state of Illinois and the middle class apart, and we've got to defeat him in November of 2018. But if all we do is beat him and go back to what we had before and keep on walking away from neighborhoods that need and deserve our help, that's not good enough. I'm Biss. I'm running for governor to take power back for the rest of us so we have a state government that works for the rest of us. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Drury. I'm a state representative from District 58. I've been representing the state of Illinois in my district for the last 5 years. I want to talk about two things tonight. I want to talk about experience, and I want to talk about trust. Because if we look at what's been going on in our state and our country, we've been electing leaders who apply to be the CEO of our company, whose only job-selling title is, I have no experience, right? Go to a place, walk out today, go to any business in the community and say, hey, I want to manage your store. It could be McDonald's, it could be any place. And say, I want to manage your store. I had your product, I think it's horrible, I don't know how to make hamburgers, I don't know how to do anything, but I want to manage your store. And they'll throw you out, they'll laugh at you. But in Illinois, in our country, we hired these people to be our CEOs, and how is that working out for us? How is that working out for our state and for our country? So I come before you, someone who has experience. I see how Illinois government works, and I see how it doesn't work for you, right? We know that government isn't working for us. Everybody who came out tonight, you're here on a Tuesday night because you know government hasn't been working for you. And it hasn't just been the last 2.5 years. We can go back to when we were in control, and things weren't so great. And it's because there was no trust. There's no trust between the government and the people. There's no trust between what we're doing and saying and in what you believe. People think that government is lying to them. Before coming here, I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago. I fought gun violence. I fought public corruption. I fought for the environment. I fought for civil rights. I have the experience to do that, and I want to continue doing that. It is pitiful. It is pitiful what the state, what your government has let happen to this community in terms of just the environmental degradation of this community, that they think that that's okay, that there's children who have lung cancer, and no one cares. They pull out and they leave it there. I'm proud to have a 100% voting record on the environment. I'm proud to be someone who's working for someone, for something, moving the state forward, building up the trust between government. Because if you don't trust us, then we have nowhere to go. And if the Democratic Party can become the party of trust, the party that people look to and say, you know what, they're telling it to be straight, then we are going to be the party that's in control for a long, long time. My name is Scott Drury, and I'm running for governor because I want to return the trust to you. I want to return government to its rightful owner, which is all of you. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I guess they had to say the best for last, okay? I'm T.O. Hardiman. I'm running for governor. This is not my first time running for governor. I ran for governor back in 2014, and we secured close to 30% of the state vote. The counties that Pat Quinn lost around were the counties that T.O. Hardiman won when I ran for governor. I'm running for governor because I want everybody to know that I have a 2020 plan which represents a perfect vision for the good people of Illinois. I'm running to support the farmers, the homeless people, the immigrant population. I'm running to support women. I'm running to support the poor and working class and middle class people, and some of the wealthy people as well, because they need representation too, but they need the right representation. I support a progressive tax in Illinois. I support a business transaction tax from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That's part of my 2020 plan. When it comes down to reducing violence in Chicago, I'm the only candidate running for governor that has a proven track record in reducing violence. When I used to run ceasefire, homicides were down by 30% in Chicago. In some of the areas that I worked in, homicides were down by 25 to 80%. I'm the only candidate running for governor that stood up against police brutality and excessive force. I'd like to become your governor from the working class population and represent the people for real. I call my campaign the Real Deal campaign because I'm not part of the Billionaire Boys Club. I want to make that clear. That's not a slight at JB. JB's a good guy. I just want to say that. But the reality is this, though. We need some representation. Illinois is going to represent everybody, not the 1%ers. I have a running mate. Her name is Patricia Avery. She's the president of NAACP in Champaign-Urbana. I'm thinking about the entire state. I know enough people to win the primary, my people. I know 400,000 some people statewide. I just have to make sure everybody votes for T.O. Hardiman. Vote for change, vote for T.O. Hardiman. My campaign is not funded by the billions, but it's powered by the people. That's our slogan. Our campaign is powered by the people. I'm the only African-American candidate running for governor, and part Latino as well. My name is T.O. Me llamo T.O. I'm your uncle. Uncle T.O.'s running for governor. You hear me? I'm your uncle. So I want y'all to know this. And I do have a sense of humor because you can't be so hardcore all the time. But I have a plan for the state that's going to help liberate the state, and I also plan to inject some soul power in the state. Let me explain. Soul power is universal for everybody. The state has lost its soul because of people like Bruce Rauner. And one thing we all have in common, we want to get rid of Bruce Rauner so we can bring the state back to life. I'm concerned about the environment. I'm concerned about everybody out there. I'm talking about the women, the men, the mental health community, you name it. You're going to have not just a governor, you're going to have a big brother in the governor's mansion that's going to represent the people for real. And I want to thank you all for listening to me tonight. Thank you.
So now we're going to go right into the questions. So we're going to start with Bob Daiber on that. So come on up.
Gentlemen, you may answer each question from your seat. So the first question is, how would you make college more affordable for Illinois families?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a believer that every child should be entitled to the opportunity to go on to school. Okay? So that's first and foremost. The way we make that more affordable is to make it more available. And that is going to have to come when we stabilize the state and we have revenue. And when we quit paying $10 million a day interest in the state, we will have money to invest in our young people to go on to college through scholarships, and we'll make community college available for all. That's how I see it, that everyone can retain a college education. I believe in community college for all. I also believe that the best and the brightest who are in their juniors and senior years of college today that have MAP grants, we need to continue to fund those. And those young people need to stay in Illinois because last year we had 16,000 students that left Illinois to go out of the state, and that's a brain drain on the state. So we have to reinvest in higher education in the state, keep our brightest kids here, and make college available for them.
I will tell you one thing. As terrible as Bruce Rauner has been, he's actually been the best governor that the University of Wisconsin ever saw, the best governor that the University of Iowa ever saw. The vicious attacks on higher education from this governor have sent young people fleeing Illinois to our neighboring states. It's a disaster. We have to restore the basic level of funding that we had before this nightmare. But then let's ask ourselves, where should we actually be? We decided as a people 100 years ago that if you wanted an equal shot at a middle-class life, you needed to have a high school degree, and therefore we made elementary and high school free for all. Well, now we're living in 2017, and to have an equal shot at a middle-class life, most people need some kind of post-secondary certification, and that means we need to make college free for all. Now, people look at Illinois right now and look at our tax system that favors the wealthy and doesn't bring in adequate revenue, and look at our budget deficit and say that's impossible, and it's impossible now. And our choices are, we can assume it's going to always be impossible because we don't have the boldness to do the right thing, or we can say we have a moral responsibility to fix it, to fix our tax code, to bring in adequate revenue, and over time move to a place where we have free college in Illinois. It's doable if we understand the affluence that's there and build a tax code that taps the affluence and funds a government that works for the rest of us.
As a product of public schools and public universities, I know, and we all know, that we have to make a commitment, a real commitment to sending people to college and letting them have a good college education. So what does Illinois need to do? We actually need to fund our universities. It's pretty simple. In 2015 and 2016, we just did in 2015, I think we gave the universities 30 cents on the dollar that we gave them from the year before. So how do we do that? I mean, we just had a tax increase not even a month ago, right? Property taxes are going through the roof in Cook County, and if you drink soda, your taxes have just gone up. And so everybody knows we just keep saying tax and tax and tax, but what does that mean for us? Is there may be no one left in Illinois to actually go to college here because we've taxed them out of the state. So what is our solution? Illinois has insurmountable debt from irresponsible government over the last 30, 40, 50 years, longer than I've been alive. We have been accumulating debt. In the most recent budget that we passed, you know what we did? We shorted the pensions again. Everyone talks about, oh, we got to be responsible. And what did we do to say we had a balanced budget? We just didn't pay the pensions. And so that debt is going to be on you, it's going to be on our children, all these people that want to go to college. We need to be responsible about that debt. We have to pay that debt down and take that money back and reinvest it into things we care about, into education, into healthcare, into job training, and into our neighborhoods. We have a plan, you can look at it at scottdrury.org. It's called Rebuild Illinois. It's our blueprint for the future. And it talks about how we're going to get that money back, and we're going to invest it in all of you, and that's how we're going to pay for college. But it's not going to be by taxing the middle class more. That is not the recipe for success.
Part of my 2020 plan includes making college tuition free for college students across Illinois. And I plan to use part of the progressive tax to make that a reality for all college students here in our great state. It's very important, but that's for college students that maintain a strong GPA. They must have a real serious GPA in order to go to college for free. But it's time to stop talking about it. Right now, in Chicago, city colleges are free for Chicago public school students as long as they maintain a good GPA. So that's my plan for governor as well, because I'm tired of seeing students struggle with, like school debt, like college loans for years and years. I know people now, they're in their 40s, and they're still paying their college loans off. That doesn't make no sense to me, because it's hard for you to get a job once you obtain your bachelor's degree and master's degree. It's not like you're going to land a job overnight. So once you get that job, if you're making $50,000 a year and you're paying $800 a month for a student loan, we have to bring an end to this type of nonsense and make college tuition free for students. And then, once I become your governor, I plan to meet with some of the billionaires that are running and talk to them about helping send these kids to school for free and college students to school for free, okay? That's part of my plan. It's in my 20 plan. You can see it. But that's the reason why it's House Bill 453 now, the business transaction tax. I plan to use part of those funds to support college tuition for students, okay? Thank you.
Well, it begins with a progressive income tax in the state. That's the very first thing we've got to do. We've got to make sure that people who can afford to pay are the first ones to pay, and that we protect the middle class and people who are striving to get to the middle class. That's the beginning of how we're going to pay for every kid that wants to go to college in this state. Now remember, not every kid is going to choose to go to college. So we need to bring back vocational training in our high schools. And we need to because there are an awful lot of kids who need the skills so that when they graduate from high school, they can get a job that isn't a minimum wage job. And by the way, we need to raise the minimum wage to $15. It isn't even a living wage, but it's a beginning. So it's important, though, that we recognize what Bruce Rauner's done to this state's university system. He has truly driven kids out of the state, and roughly 80% of the kids who leave the state to go to college stay where they went to college. We lose our best economic resources. We lose our kids because Bruce Rauner won't fund schools. It's time for a change, and I'll bring it.
What incentives can you offer businesses that reside in wards that border other states? That border other states. What incentives can you offer businesses that reside in wards that border other states?
Here's how our system of taxes and incentives works in Illinois. If you're a business that's big enough to hire a lobbyist, if you're a business that knows how to work the system, if you're a business that's already there, you go to Springfield, get a special deal, get your taxes cut, and sometimes the rest of us lose services, but the rest of the time the tax burden moves onto somebody else, onto smaller businesses, onto younger businesses, onto businesses that would be the lifeblood of an economy if we had a level playing field. The first thing we need to do is to have a level playing field. But the next thing we need to do, specifically when it comes to the border, is we need a fair tax code. If you think that middle-class families are the only ones who are at a disadvantage because of our punishing property taxes because we're too scared as a state to tax the rich where the money is, think again. It's businesses too. Small and medium-sized businesses are punished by our high property taxes because our state simply doesn't have the guts to get the money where it's needed. And so we need to have very targeted, focused incentive programs that don't participate in the race to the bottom, but just make sure that we have economic activity along the border. But the best way to have a durable, thriving economy along the border is to have a fair tax code that actually works for all businesses, for new businesses, for people who don't have someone in a room when the decisions are made in Springfield. That's the way, not just to create a level playing field, but a thriving economy that grows for the rest of us.
So how do we keep businesses here? How do we incentivize them? I think the first thing you need to do is you need to redefine people's perception of the state of Illinois, right? When people think of Illinois, the first thing that comes to your mind, you can all do it right now, it's usually not a positive thought. We, as a government, have driven the state into the ground to the point that people don't want to come here because they don't believe the state has anything for them, or they think that the only solution we have for them is increased taxes down the road. I want to say a little thing about the progressive income tax. It's great to talk about it, but it doesn't exist. And it won't exist until 2022. So do we wait? Do we wait between 2018 and 2022 and just do nothing? Or can we just tax the middle class and the working class again on the heels of a tax increase just a few weeks ago? I don't think that's honest. I don't think that that's the right answer. We need to create an environment where where people want to live, and if people want to live here, that's where the employers are going to come in. If people know that it's a stable government that we provide, then they're going to be here. Executives are flocking to Chicago. They're flocking to the suburbs of Chicago. Why? Because they want to be there. But what they're not doing is they're not opening up factories in Chicago. They're opening up just down the street in Indiana. They're opening them up in Wisconsin, in my neighborhood. Why are they doing that? Because they realize that the system that Illinois has set up with all of the tremendous debt and all of the corruption eventually is going to hit them. And so they're making decisions that don't benefit all of us. And those decisions hurt. So the number one way to bring businesses back is to make sure that we have an honest government that talks to you honestly and makes the government and makes people proud to be in this state, and they're going to come back. Thank you.
Under the Hardiman administration, I believe the fair taxing of the businesses, but we have 12.5 million people living in Illinois right now, and 1.7 million people are living in poverty throughout Illinois, throughout the entire state. My plan is to turn the business movement in Illinois into a movement to bring people out of poverty and provide some of these businesses with some incentives if they hire some of the people in that population of the 1.7 million people living in poverty, so we can make Illinois good for everybody, all the working class people here. As your governor, I plan to roll my sleeves up, visit a lot of businesses that would like to come to Illinois, and really work with them so we can make it good for them to do business in Illinois, because like Mr. Drury was saying, a lot of people, when you think about Illinois, everybody's thinking about how bad it is, but Illinois is a good state. I'm trying to stay away from the word great because I don't want to be associated with Donald Trump under no circumstances. And I want to make that clear, but Illinois is a strong state, but as long as you have the right leadership in Illinois, we can attract more businesses here, and that's part of my 2020 plan as well, to go out and represent a perfect vision for businesses and make sure we're hiring people out here, getting people out of poverty. About 20% out of the 1.7 million people are women living in poverty that have children. We got to change the conditions in Illinois to attract businesses as well, and that's my plan to attract businesses here in Illinois, okay?
Remember that when Bruce Rauner ran for office in 2014, he put his Rolex in his drawer somewhere and put on a Timex watch. And then he went and bought an LLB plaid shirt and put that on. And then he dropped his G's somewhere. I'm not sure where those went to. And then he put on a Carhartt jacket, got on a Harley, and rode around the state and pretended he isn't from Winnetka. But underneath that Carhartt jacket was a hidden agenda. And I don't think anybody that voted for him really knew that he was carrying around the Koch brothers' right-wing agenda. And that agenda says lower wages, lower workplace safety, lower taxes, and jobs will get created in this state. Anybody feel like jobs got created in this state in the last couple of years? No. And he's wrong, by the way. And a governor shouldn't be thinking about lowering wages, lowering workplace safety, and lowering taxes. Your next governor ought to be thinking about raising wages, keeping our unions in place, getting rid of right-to-work legislation, and standing up for ending marketing rights, making sure prevailing wage laws are strengthened in this state, and making workplace safety a priority. It's important. We're going to create jobs in this state by people who live in this state. 2/3 of the jobs that get created are created by small businesses. 2/3 of the jobs, and that means the state government has to stand on the side of small business people who want to start businesses, who want to grow businesses. That means creating a small business loan fund, a micro loan fund, making sure we provide technical assistance and mentorship. That's how we're going to grow jobs in this state.
Let me begin by saying this first and foremost. I live in a region that's a border state right next to Missouri, okay? And I'll tell you, there's 3 things that border counties and border communities have to do to compete. Number 1, you've got to be able, as a local unit of government, to invest in infrastructure. And you've got to be willing to put the best infrastructure possible for that business that wants to move there. If you can't do that, you're not going to attract it. Secondly, you have to have a well-trained workforce. You got to have young people that are bright. You got to have young people and experienced people who can operate equipment. They have to be to work on time, and they have to be a committed workforce. That's the second thing. And the third thing that you have to do, you have to develop a marketing plan that tells that business why they want to come to Illinois. We tell people 20 reasons not to come here. We tell them that's the governor's marketing plan. Don't come to Illinois, high taxes, high workers' comp, bad place to locate. Who would come here with that type of marketing plan? Let me tell you, if I would have been governor, I would have mailed out 2,000 letters to every business that flooded in St. Louis in June, telling them, move across the river where you pay no flood insurance. Move across the river where you got a better, well-trained workforce, and people are going to come to work. Because in Missouri today there's legislation to lower minimum wage from $10 to $7.70. They passed right to work 48 hours after Eric Greitens became governor.
Good job. board that borders another state, and unfortunately for us, it's Indiana. Actually, I mean, that doesn't go in Indiana. But anyway, okay, so this next question goes to Mr. Drury Scott. As governor, how would you address the K-12 education funding in the state?
Well, this is where we get back to the experience thing, because it's not how would I, but how have I been addressing the K-12 education funding in the state. Tomorrow we head back to Springfield. The General Assembly, the House of Representatives heads back to Springfield to vote on Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1, I'm proud, it got 60 votes in the House. It needed 60 votes to pass, and I was one of those 60. There were 7 Democrats that chose not to vote for it. And tomorrow we go down to try to override the governor's mandatory veto. So what is SB 1? Because I'm kind of in the weeds, right? That is a bill that finally, in Illinois, fixes the unfair school funding system that we have, which right now just gives money pro rata to every school in the state of Illinois and doesn't really look at where they need the money. It doesn't look at who needs the money. Now, I represent a district that's very interesting. We have some of the wealthiest schools in the state, and we also have one of the schools that's the most underfunded schools in the state. So I get to see the disparity in school funding in my own district, and I get to see the opportunities that some kids have just because they live in one zip code, and the opportunities that kids don't have because they live across the street, literally. So SB 1 fixes that. We have new money coming in from this tax increase, and we've allocated $350 million of that money to go towards the new school system, the fair funding system, that looks at a needs-based system and where that money needs to go. So it's not how would I fix it, it's what I'm doing to fix it. And tomorrow I'm going to go down to Springfield, I'm going to vote to override that veto, we're going to throw it in Governor Brown's face, and I hope there's 70 other Democrats who are to that veto.
No, it's your turn, Theo.
Okay, funding K through 12 is a priority. I'm tired of seeing these kids worried about if they're going to start school on time or not. That's ridiculous. No governor, nobody in public office should ever hold the kids hostage to push forth their own personal agenda. As far as funding the schools, the lobby was set up to fund the schools, and right now, when you speak about the lobby funding schools, people act like they don't know what you're talking about. We have to find a way to divert that money right back to funding the public schools and find other resources, which that's coming out the business transaction tax as well, to make sure these schools are properly funded statewide. I do support Senate Bill number 1 as well, because it's all about funding the schools and distributing the funding statewide. We can't just think about Chicago, but every year, trust me when I tell you, Chicago is always on the brink of not starting the schools on time. Imagine what that does to the psyche of the kids that go to Chicago public schools. The teachers have to work 2 or 3 different jobs just to make ends meet because they're worried about their pensions. We have to stop this nonsense and make schools a priority, number 1 priority in the state of Illinois. Because of the kids who really represent our future, why won't we make them a priority? So as your governor and your big brother as well, and a proven leader, I plan to make the kids a priority by funding the schools and stop talking about it and make sure the funds are there every year for the schools statewide. That's my plan.
Well, let's begin with a focus on adequacy and equity. There are 2 things that need to be dealt with. Remember, Illinois is running at 49th or 50th out of the 50 states in the United States for state funding for education. Can you imagine that? The state of Illinois, where we've got, terrific educational resources, great kids, and an unbelievably well-trained workforce. People want to be in the state of Illinois with their businesses, but they won't be in the future if we don't fund our schools properly. And if we're running 49th or 50th out of 50 states, by the way, 26% of funding for schools in the state of Illinois comes from the state. The average state in the United States, 46%. You wonder why your property taxes are so high? It's because guess who fills in the rest from 26% to about 92%, the rest from the government, from the federal government. It's property taxes. And other states, 46% from state government, 46% from property taxes. That's how we're going to lower property taxes and fund our schools. But we need a progressive income tax to get there. Now, SB 1, which Representative Drury mentioned, SB 1 helps with equity. It starts with Tier 1 schools and kids who need it most. And that's how it starts the funding process, the new funding formula. But it's a progressive, so that gets us equity. It's a progressive income tax that gets us adequacy in funding. We have got to step it up. We've got to pay our teachers properly. We've got to lower class sizes in the state and make education a priority.
Let me begin by saying this, that the funding of education should be the first item resolved in the budget, not the last. That's why today, I stepped in the back room back here to take a call from a media outlet in St. Louis, Camel X, because we're doing an emergency tax distribution right after Labor Day to make sure we can make payroll through the county treasurer's office. So education needs to be at the front of the budget, and I today cannot understand why it's not. But I want to tell you, in terms of Senate Bill 1, you know, there's a lot of discussion about it not being a fair bill, but it's got to be signed into law. And what's flawed about Senate Bill 1 is it's based on equalized assessed valuation. And it will be flawed until we move away from equalized assessed values, that's property taxes, funding public education. I talked about this in 1992, okay? And I've been in favor, whether you want to talk about a progressive income tax, whether you want to talk about financial transaction tax, we need to have an education designated tax that funds schools other than property taxes, because you'll never relieve property taxes in the state until you do that. You'll never do it, okay? And just in closing, I have one more thing to say about funding education, because we were asked about K through 12. I am for public funding pre-K through 12. Pre-K through 12. And every kid's a counter. Every kid's a counter. Those pre-K kids are not counters on general state aid today, and they should be, because those early childhood years in pre-K are so formative for that kid to be successful. So that's a change that's got to happen. And in saying what I have said about funding schools, and my time is up, but every person in here has got to encourage that change.
In a week and a half, my two children are going to be starting 2nd and 4th grade in our neighborhood public school. And we know the school's going to open, but if the state government doesn't get its act together, we don't know how long it's going to stay open. This is unconscionable. Governor Rauner vetoed Senate Bill 1 because, as his people put it, he vetoed the bill because he agreed with 90% of it. Now, I don't know who all in the audience is married, but in my experience, you should probably call 90% away and move on. Anyway, I was proud to vote for the bill. I was proud to be a part of the vote to override the veto in the Senate on Sunday. I hope the House does the same thing. But let's just pause for a second and think about how cramped and timid our ambitions have become. Illinois is worst in the country at educational equity, and this is an important bill, a step in the right direction, and if it passes, Illinois will be worst in the country in educational equity. We can do so much better than that. We can do so much better than that. It starts with the way that we get our tax money. We are too reliant on property taxes because we don't have the courage to ask millionaires and billionaires to finally pay their share. And the way to fix this is to do all of it at once, to amend the Constitution, allow a progressive tax, tax millionaires and billionaires fairly, bring in adequate revenue, shift the burden from the unfairly overburdened middle tax property taxpayer to the very wealthy, and fund schools equitably. All of that is doable, but not if we keep on having these low expectations. It's time to be bold.
T.O. Hardiman, you're up. What is your position on the legalization of marijuana?
Well, put it like this, I agree with legalizing marijuana, to be honest with you. When I become governor, I plan to commute low-level, non-violent offenses here in the state of Illinois anyway. I don't see where it's going to be an issue with low levels of marijuana, because too many people are sitting in these jails, and it's a lot of things that happen in people's minds when they go to jail. And a lot of these people are released from prison, and we have to find a way to reduce the recidivism rate in Illinois. And I plan to turn some of them low minimum level penitentiaries, I need to hear this clearly. My plan is to turn minimum level penitentiaries into institutions of higher learning. And when them guys go through those minimum level penitentiaries, when they come out, I'm going to partner them with some of them businesses that I plan to attract to Illinois so we can stop them from using it as a revolving door. So back to your question, I do support legalizing marijuana because what I want to do is make sure there's stages to it, because you got to make sure that people are not abusing that particular system. So we would have to tweak it a certain way when it becomes law. I'm not just saying marijuana use for everybody, high amounts. I'm talking about low amounts of marijuana. I want to make that clear, low amounts. Okay? Low amounts. Now, you got to understand, I've seen the ugly side of addiction. I know the ugly side of addiction. And I never would promote anything that's going to get people addicted out here in Illinois, okay? As a leader, I have to make the type of executive decisions. So I understand we can tax the marijuana, but I'm not trying to promote nothing that's going to have people addicted, okay?
We need to legalize marijuana and tax it. But along with that, you know, and some of it's been mentioned, but you know, we also need to make it safe. That's one of the biggest reasons to do it. We need to be safe. We shouldn't have all these people in prison because they had marijuana on them. And we need criminal justice reform more broadly. And I'm proud, by the way, to have announced my lieutenant governor candidate, one of the great criminal justice reform advocates in this state for more than 20 years, State Representative Juliana Stratton is standing over here. And together, we're going to not only be able to make it safe and make criminal justice reform happen in this state, but the $350 to $700 million of tax revenue that we can bring in, it ought to go to help fund our schools and to make sure that we're expanding health care in this state.
I said I would willingly sign a bill into law to legalize marijuana, but it had to be the will of the people. You're going to have to advise me through a non-binding referendum that you want it. So if you do it like we did in Washington or Colorado or California, now they had binding referendums that put it into law. But I just said it's the will of the people. Now, I'm all for that, and I will sign the bill, but the people are going to have to tell me that they want it. Okay? Because I don't want a bunch of wealthy lobbyists going to Springfield with suitcases of pot and getting this thing passed. You know? That's you know, take a bunch of senators out and let them poke a bone one night, and then they come back in and sign. So let's just call it like it is, you know? So you know, I'm going to get a good laugh out of the crowd because I tell it just like it is. All right. So you know, if you want a governor that's going to tell you like it is, you just saw it. Okay. Now I want to tell you something I want you to do because I read this article coming up here. If you're a local government official and you get a magazine called Governing, the pot czar is featured in the centerfold. If you don't get the magazine called Governing, just Google it and read it. He tells you all about making money out of pot. It's a really good article. In fact, I got it in my car. So there's some good information in there about the benefits and the downsizes and the cost of it, because it's not all free.
You know, I was proud to vote for medicinal marijuana when it passed, and nobody offered me a suitcase full of pot once. So I obviously should have held out for longer, I guess. But that wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough. I'm a proud co-sponsor of Senate Bill 316 to legalize the recreational use of marijuana. And yes, we need to tax it. And yes, we need the revenue. And yes, that will help our budget. Yes, that will help us run schools. But let's be honest, this is a social and racial justice issue. I represent Drury High School in my district. Wonderful high school that's pretty darn affluent and very white. And what do y'all think happens when a kid at Drury High School gets caught with a joint? No one knows, because they never even bothered trying to catch them. They just don't pay attention. That's not what they focus on there. But as you know well, especially in black and brown communities, not just in this city and this state, but across this country, being caught with a joint can change the trajectory of your entire life. Your employability, your educational trajectory, everything. That's wrong. That's wrong. And so we need legalization of marijuana for all kinds of other reasons, but fundamentally because we need to fight every day for racial justice in Illinois.
I'm in favor of legalizing it, taxing it, and it's not just the revenue. I mean, we've already heard that answer, but there actually is a safety component to legalizing it as well. I mean, look, there's a bunch of people in here, all age ranges, and my guess is at least one person in this room bought alcohol before they were 21. At least one of you. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. But what you didn't do is you didn't go find Al Capone, and you didn't go to a speakeasy to do it. And so there is a safety aspect. But I want to talk not just about recreational marijuana. I want to talk about this concept of the criminal justice system, and I want to talk about it from the position of experience. I said earlier that I was a federal prosecutor, so look, I've fought the war on drugs, and it was a war that should never have been fought. Every time we had to do that case, we would say it's like taking a teaspoon of water out of Lake Michigan. No one knows you've done anything, but you've ruined somebody's life. You have ruined somebody's life. So what have I done to make amends for that, to show people that, yeah, that's where I come from, and I can speak from a position of authority on that because I know what we're doing? I was on the commission to reduce the prison population by 25% by 2025, and realized that instead of investing in prisons, we should be investing in communities, building after-school programs, building rehabilitation centers so people can become productive citizens, not just spending $40,000 a year to keep someone locked up. We should be building communities, not building prisons, right? Let's build communities, not build prisons. And that's part of our plan. And as part of our plan, we said to get the money back, to reinvest that into schools, into communities, into job training. That's what we're going to do. Thanks.
JB, you're up. What are your plans for Illinois veterans?
Good, thank you. So first of all, I started out a child of a veteran, a grandchild of a veteran, a brother-in-law of a veteran. My cousin founded the Pritzker Military Museum downtown, served 20 years in the Army and then in the National Guard here in Illinois. I care deeply about it. It's kind of in addition to our other family business, a family business. And honestly, veterans have been mistreated in our state. Not only because the federal government hasn't done a great job in the Veterans Administration, but also because in our state, I mean, we need to honor our veterans and make sure that the social services that are so necessary, the mental health facilities that are so necessary, that have been part of the fabric of the state in the past, that got decimated under Bruce Rauner's budget. 736 days we went without a budget in the state. And when mental health facilities close, when shelters close, when services close, you can't just reappropriate and then think that they're going to reopen. When psychiatrists are fired, when service providers are fired, and the clients go away, they go away almost for good. And you can't get it back immediately. That's why we need a Marshall Plan in this state for rebuilding our safety net. It is going to focus on everybody that needs the safety net, and also all of you who don't touch the safety net, by the way. Even if you are not touching the safety net today, the safety net is there for you, for me, for everybody up here. It's important that we stand up for our veterans by rebuilding the safety net in this state.
Well, first and foremost, anybody in this room that has a draft card needs and deserves the utmost veterans benefits. And that was from the Vietnam War era. When the draft ended, and my generation was the last group to get a draft card, when you were drafted in the military, you didn't have a choice. There was a lottery January 1st each and every year. For those in this room that are old enough to remember this. And in 1971, if your number was below 200, you were going whether you wanted to or not. Young people today don't know that. You know, we spent time here today talking about funding college education and whatnot. And in 1970 and 71, that might have been delayed for 2 years till after you did 2 years of military service. Okay? That generation has never been respected. Never been respected. And it needs to be. Not just in this state, but in this nation. Secondly, how many people in this room contribute to DAV? Disabled? Yeah, I do too. Always, every month just about. Okay? Disabled Veterans Fund. So when we are collecting, you know, $15, $25 a month to help disabled veterans, I think it tells you the shortfall that we're doing as a state to help disabled veterans. So we need to make sure that those disabled veterans have our utmost care because they provide us with our freedoms. And I'll do that as governor. Thank you.
We don't take care of our veterans the way we ought to. We just don't. Part of that is about health care. We need to provide universal health care, and that's physical health and mental health. We need to do it. We need to do it. Part of that's housing. Think for a second about the epidemic of homeless veterans. Think about that. That's wrong. That's wrong. We need to provide housing services far better than we do. We can't allow there to be a single homeless veteran. We shouldn't allow there to be a single homeless person, by the way. And then how about jobs? How about the unemployment crisis among veterans who learn so much, develop so many skills, are so qualified, but then often have trouble plugging into the economy they've been away from for a few years? How about how little we do to encourage employers to hire veterans, to make it easier for veterans to start business? That's wrong, and we're just missing out on an economic opportunity as well as doing the wrong thing for people. But I also think we should ask ourselves, how in God's name did we get here? People go across the world and risk their lives for us, and come back and we can't care for them properly? That means something. That means that we have a society where everyone's sticking up for themselves. We're not thinking about the communal good. I think we need an ethic of service in this state, where everybody feels a calling to serve, where the state government and the state governor provides everyone with an opportunity to serve, and then we as a society show our gratitude to those who serve by making sure they are properly treated, properly served, and have adequate economic opportunities. That's what I'm going to do as governor.
First of all, if there are any veterans here tonight who've come out, I just want to thank you. I'm sure I'm saying this on behalf of all of us up here. Thank you for your service. Right, because it's easy for us to put on a suit and tie and sit up at a table and talk, but the only reason we have the ability to be doing this is because people put their lives at risk, put their families' lives at risk. I live next to an Army Reserve and a naval base, and so I know when people are being deployed, what the toll it takes on families. It's not just the veterans, but I should say anyone who's a spouse of a veteran. Thank you for your service, because it's not just the person who goes, it's the people that stay. And so what do we do, right? We send our children abroad to defend freedom, to defend the right to speak, to defend the dumb debates we have on TV, to defend politics, and we come back and we do nothing for them. What do? We saddle the state with debt so they can't function. We have no services. We fight about a budget when everyone knew the solution 2 years ago. Everyone knew where we were headed 2 years ago, but what did we do? While people were really fighting for freedom, and in our military, we were fighting about nothing. That's what we did. That's what politicians did. We fought about nothing. And we called it a war. It was insulting. I hear the Speaker of the House, we're at war. You got to follow me into the trenches. We weren't at war. We're in politics. We're supposed to be helping people. We're supposed to come together. We're supposed to get resolutions. Democracy is not about fighting. So what do we need to do? We need to stand up for the values that you've been fighting for. We need to stand up for democracy. We need to stand up for freedom. We need to let the system work. We need to let people vote on issues, not hold bills. That's what we need to do. That's what I've been fighting for. And that's the trust that we need in our government. That's what we deserve.
Supporting veterans is a no-brainer for me. I trace my roots back to a slave plantation in Louisiana here in the United States. My ancestors fought in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the list goes on and on. My son, T.O. Hardiman Jr. is in the National Guard right now. because I believe, supporting the country. We're patriots. I want to make that clear. If I had a chance to live again and come back to life, I would come back as a United States Marine. That's what I would do. I just want to make that clear. So supporting veterans is number one, and I do donate to the Wounded Warriors Project right now, and I got a chance to visit a lot of veterans statewide, up in Lake County, the Veterans Hospital there, and on the west side of Chicago. I've had a lot of dialogue with veterans, and I'm working on a lot of veterans coming out to support T.O. Hardiman for governor. But I don't want to just give you guys a lot of lip service here tonight. I'm a man of action. And once you all support me as your governor, we plan to make all this a reality in the state of Illinois. So supporting veterans is right there on the top of my list as well. Thank you.
The 10th Ward has historically been treated as a dumping ground for industry and corporate polluters. We have more landfills and chemical waste here than the rest of the city put together. What changes will you make to the Illinois EPA to make sure that the families in the 10th Ward are safe from that kind of pollution in the future? This was my question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, dumping chemical waste, etc. Anytime you're around heavy industry, it is a problem. I come from a county where the largest oil refinery in the state exists, and you can see butane gas coming up out of manholes. I mean, you have to be careful there's not fires. It contaminates water, okay? And that comes from lack of environmental control principles. So anywhere in the state that we have got heavy industry, we have to enforce environmental controls for safe water, because we do not want to become Flint, Michigan, okay? We have to make sure our air quality is premier. I grew up, when I would look to the west in the morning, you used to be able to see the smog hanging over the Mississippi River, and it was only going to come down one place in my neighborhood because the winds were prevalently west. So clean air policies are good. That air is much cleaner today. And third and foremost is what industries leave behind for you as a municipality to clean up after they've made their billions and have moved on. And they leave it here for a community to deal with. Hazardous metal waste, hazardous chemical waste, and deteriorating building structures that have no EAD. So they have to be held accountable as well. So that's what I'll do as governor, and I'll be enforcing those types of regulations. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And the history is ugly. From the mountains of petcoke, from the history of heavy metals, from what we now know about manganese. This is a place that has been the victim of environmental degradation. This is a place that has been, as was said, a dumping ground. This is also not a place that is home to a whole lot of billionaires. This is not a place where the connected and wealthy and powerful live. And if you look at the map of the state and look at those places that exist that have been dumping grounds, and look at the places that are pristine, it's pretty obvious who has political power and what they're doing with it. When I'm governor, the Illinois EPA is going to treat every corner of Illinois equally. When I'm governor, we're not going to say that it's okay to dump something somewhere because of the fact that the people there aren't as politically powerful or as wealthy as the people somewhere else. And when I'm governor, we're going to work with community activists, not against them, to make sure that voices are heard at home, in the neighborhood, by parents who are concerned about the water that their children are drinking and the playgrounds where the children are playing. The adversarial culture has been obscene. You've had a government that's been on the side of the businesses that we're dumping against the health of the community. When I'm governor of Illinois, your EPA is going to be on the opposite side of that for sure.
We need to call the environmental issue what it is. It's a civil rights issue, right? It is absolutely a civil rights issue. We take places that we think can't defend themselves, and we dump on it. They do it up not far from my neighborhood in Waukegan, the coal plant, and they do it out here. And what they don't talk about is the carnage that it leaves. It's not just that the soil is dirty. It's the plume that is up in the air. It's the kids that are growing up with asthma, and the data shows it. This isn't made up stuff. This isn't like Trump denying climate change. The data is there that in communities where people are dumping, where there's pollution, you have a rate of asthma amongst children that is exponentially higher than anywhere else. It is a civil rights issue. And so as governor, we're going to have an EPA in Illinois. I mean, come on. Illinois EPA, has anyone seen them around? I had an environmental issue in my district with a landfill. And when you went to look at the records of what EPA had done, they were just getting paid money to do testing, and so they just wanted to keep the contract coming in from the dump. They didn't want to fix it because they wanted to make money off the dump. We're going to fix that. We're going to have a real EPA. We're going to have a real EPA director, but we're also going to work with the Attorney General to make sure that she is filing lawsuits against people who are violating civil rights, people who are violating the laws that are already on the books. They're not doing it. And we're going to change that. We're going to fight for you. We're going to make you believe in our government, and we're going to clean up these messes all over the state because it's an injustice that shouldn't exist.
Also, when I ran for governor in 2014, I was strictly against fracking and drilling here in Illinois. I'm one of the only candidates running for governor. It is clear. We have shut down an incinerator in the western suburbs in the city of Hillside, Illinois. The incinerator was very toxic, a lot of toxic fumes hovering over the community air out there, and we got it shut down. I believe as governor, once I become the governor, when I meet with these corporations that are in the business of dumping, illegal dumping, and hazardous materials throughout the state, if they don't have a plan as far as what they're going to dump in this state, they cannot open up their business. We have to hold their businesses hostage until they come up with a bona fide plan when they dump hazardous materials. Because we have to make the lakes great and make the state great. And we need to support the 10th board, Alderman, but at the same time, I know you're still in the process of opening up, some bigger opportunities out here and building like 13,000 affordable homes and all that kind of good stuff. But we have to make sure there's a plan in place to stop illegal dumping. If they cannot present that plan, we have to hold up the business for a little while. I'm not saying we shouldn't do business with them, but there's no plan in place, we cannot move forward. That's the problem now. We keep trying to elect people that don't have a plan in place. Let them just move as they go. We need somebody who's going to think it through, write it up, and make it happen. I plan to be one of the most effective governors in the state of Illinois.
Just like the Koch brothers are polluting our state with their wrong-headed ideas, they're polluting the 10th Ward with their pet coke that's blowing around on everybody's roofs and on your land. And we need to stop it. So we need the Illinois EPA to step up and work with the Chicago Department of Health and make sure that we're doing more to keep the pet coke on the mounds and make sure that we're putting fencing up to make sure that we're keeping it in place. And then we've got to work hard to figure out, the severe health consequences of pet coke and manganese in this neighborhood isn't even fully known. So the monitoring in the neighborhood isn't good enough. We don't really know exactly the full extent of it, but until we do, we've got to limit their production. We've got to make sure that this is not something that expands, but instead contracts. It's something I'll work hard at the state level to work with the city and with the 10th Ward so that we can bring it down. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we have an EPA at the federal level that isn't doing enough. And the application for Superfund recognition in the 10th Ward needs to be granted, but we all know that under Donald Trump, it probably isn't going to happen, is it? And we don't have a governor who could be talking to the federal government on your behalf, advocating for it. He won't advocate for it, just like he did not stand up to Donald Trump about Charlottesville. Just like that, he won't stand up to Donald Trump on this issue. You need a governor who will, and who will create a firewall in this state against the environmental hazards. Thank you.
We have one last question. We'll start with Senator Biss. How do you feel about federal immigration laws, the sanctuary cities and the threats to their funding, and the way that ICE has been targeting specific communities?
I still have trouble saying this sentence, but here we go. Donald Trump is President of the United States of America. And we have a moral responsibility to act as the front line of defense against his immoral policies, against his racist policies, and against his policies that harm our ability to grow our economy as well. That's why I was proud to co-sponsor the Trust Act that Governor Rauner appears to be, maybe, depending on the day of the week, signing into law. That's something I supported for a long time, even before Donald Trump was president, because I understood the danger that's posed by requests from the federal government to local law enforcement to stop doing their job and instead start to become a deportation force. But we shouldn't stop there. Shortly after the election, I visited the high school in my hometown. And I met with a group of student dreamers. Students who looked me in the eye and said, "We're frightened. We're frightened for ourselves, and we're really frightened for our parents." And I said, I'm not going to make you a promise I can't keep. And I can't keep a promise about this federal government, but I'm going to promise that I'm going to do everything in my power. Not just everything that I will do as state senator, as I have done. Not just everything I will do as governor, as I intend to do, but everything I can do as a citizen. Working with my local school districts and municipalities to make sure they pass strong, welcoming ordinances. Working to make sure at every level of government and on the citizen level, we are doing all we can to protect vulnerable communities from the attacks of this administration. This, ladies and gentlemen, 2017 is a crucial moral test. When I'm governor, the state of Illinois is going to pass with flying colors.
So think back to November 8th of last year. It was the morning of the election, right? But think back to the morning. Think back to the morning when you woke up. And the excitement you had when, if you didn't early vote, you went to vote. And then think through that day, and then think about November 9th. And how you felt when you woke up on November 9th. And then think about how you felt on Saturday when you turned on your TV and you saw the violence going on. That wasn't a movie. It wasn't a historical movie. This was going on in 2017 in Virginia. And it's going on in other places all around the country. And it needs to stop. It needs to. We are a nation of immigrants. The Statue of Liberty holds her torch up high. And we need to respect that that's what makes America great. Not protecting one group of people, and not putting one group of people against another group of people. That's what makes America great. And so we have a governor right now who is scared to stand up to that president who we put into office. Well, no, look, no one in this room did. No one in this room did. But somehow he got into office, right? He got, and we need to look at that as Democrats. We need to look at that, and we need to stand up for our values. But that doesn't mean just talking about how bad the other side is. We need to talk about why we're great. We need to talk about our ideas. We need to talk about why Democrats are better. We need to talk about why we're going to stand up for the people that no one's standing up for. Because it's not enough just to blame the other side if we don't have any better ideas. And on immigration, we have much better ideas. We're just not getting them out. We're not selling them. We're not convincing them. We're getting drowned out by a bunch of racist terrorists that our governor in Illinois right now doesn't want to call racist terrorists. You got to call it like you see it. You got to stand up for what you believe in. You need a governor who has a history of standing up for what you believe in, for what we believe in, and that's what you're going to get when I'm governor.
Well, this immigration issue is what's called the elephant in the room. Nobody really wants to deal with it for what it's worth. All of us are immigrants. My ancestors were not immigrants, though. We came over here on slave ships. I want to make that clear because, Ben Carson, African-American individual, got it wrong. He called us immigrants. We came over here at the bottom of a slave ship. I don't think nobody can understand the barbaric nature of what the bottom of a slave ship looks like. It takes 2 months to take a voyage from West Africa to the shores of America, laying on your back with your family members laying with shackled all up. And enough of that for right now. But the thing is, I support the process of immigration here in Illinois, and I'm not going to turn back the hands of time. And when I said the elephant in the room, I want to make this clear. Instead of sending people back, because for some reason, the face of immigration has become Latino people. But it's not all Latino people. We have to change the narrative. Latino people were here in America, in the western powers in California. They're not really immigrants, but since we have to abide by the law, we have to kind of work the law system out where it will benefit everybody. So that's my policy for right now on immigration, because I have to study the issue in its entirety and its totality as well to make sure we make the right decisions. But I'm not in favor of sending people back, because the thing is, we're all immigrants. If that's the case, we all must go back to where we came from. People may not want to hear that. If that's the case, we all need to go back. And right now, nobody is going to leave America, and we have to make it right for who's here right now. Okay? That's my policy there. Thank you.
There's nobody on the stage that fought harder than I did to defeat Donald Trump, and nobody who's been a greater bulwark against him since then. Last year, I traveled to multiple states, knocked on doors, made phone calls, phone bank everywhere I could, raised money, gave money, and I went on national television. I called him what he is, a racist and a xenophobe. And I've continued to do that because that is what he is. Anybody here listen to that press conference today? That's the real Donald Trump. He's a racist, everybody. He's a racist. And we need a governor who's going to stand up and call him a racist. Now, what has he talked about? Throughout the campaign, he talked about building a wall, and he talked about a Muslim registry, and he talked about a travel ban against Muslims. If he even tries to institute a Muslim registry, will you all join me? We're all going to walk down to the registry and register as Muslims. Theo's right. It's not just about Latinos. It's not just about Muslims. He wants to keep everybody out of the United States because apparently he agrees with the neo-Nazis. He agrees with the racists. He agrees with the people who, the white supremacists yesterday, and who on Saturday killed a young woman who was simply out there promoting peace. That's what she was about. And I will be a governor who will stand up, sign the Trust Act. We need the Trust Act in the state. And stand up for immigrants. My family were refugees to this country. And if they hadn't been let in, I wouldn't be here. We'd be dead. I will be a governor who stands up for immigrants in this state.
I'm going to answer this question directly. The question was asked is, do you support this as a sanctuary state? My answer is yes, and I'm going to tell you directly why. Because I am not in favor of creating a state of orphans. And I will tell you exactly what will happen. If you begin to deport people from the state of Illinois, they will leave their children behind because they were born on this land and they have the right to stay. Okay? I am not for breaking up families. Those families need to remain here. 2 years ago, Syrian refugees began moving into the St. Louis region. One of my key roles that I had was to help place these kids in school, help these first generations of Americans get an education. I've been doing that for about 20 years because of the Hispanic population. We have the second largest Hispanic population in Madison County in the state of Illinois, in Fairmont City. In fact, it's 90% Hispanic, all right? So we continue to have all sorts of different immigrants that move into the state of Illinois. They want their children to live the American dream. That is their goal. They want their kids to live the American dream. They want them to work themselves up to be middle-class Americans, and that's what I support as governor. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates for answering our questions. Let's give them a round of applause. All candidates will have 2 minutes to do their final closing remarks. Starting with Jerry Scott.
Thank you so much for the great questions, being here, that's advocacy. Experience and trust. Right? At the end of the day, You heard a lot of our positions, a lot of them were similar, be different in some places. But what this election is going to come down to is who's going to carry that through. Who can you trust to lead Illinois forward? And to make that analysis, you have to look at how we got here, right? Because look, Illinois has been a train wreck for 2.5 years with Bruce Rauner at the helm. But think about this honestly. How great was Illinois 3 years ago? How great were your lives here in the 10th Ward 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Who was standing up for you? Who in government did you look to and say, boy, I'm really glad that woman or that man has a track record of actually fighting for me, for being my voice? This year I became the first Democrat in 30 years, I'm only 44, the first Democrat in 30 years who did not support Mike Madigan being Speaker of the House. And 30 years. And people said, that's so courageous. It wasn't courageous. I represented my district. Right? My district said, don't do it. And I didn't do it. But 66 other people did it, and for 30 years, hundreds of people have done it. Right? So there's a track record. What I'm saying there, when I'm sitting in my seat, I'm saying, this is what I'm going to do. These are the beliefs that I have. You don't have to wonder, is he just another politician who's speaking out of both sides of his mouth and is going to go to some other ward tomorrow and say completely different things? You can look at my record and you can say, you know what? He's good for what he says. He's honest. He's blunt. I may not even agree with everything that he says, but at least I know where he stands. And that's why the experience matters. I have a voting record. You can look it up. You can challenge me. I'm proud to talk to you about it afterwards. And I have a record of trust. And that's what Illinois needs more than anything. If we don't have a foundation of trust, we're building all of the stuff we talked about on a swamp. And it's sinking, and we all know it. My name is Scott Drury. I'm running for governor because I want to return government to you. Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to thank Sue Garza for having me to come out here today. Thank everybody for listening. I want everybody to just think out of the box and look at supporting T.O. Hardiman for governor. I have a proven track record in a lot of different areas of expertise, but I plan to represent all the people in Illinois, like I said, from the farmers to the seniors, the veterans, the homeless population, the mental health community, the recovering community, everybody, the women, the children, because we need a government that understands how it is to be on a certain level of society to raise up to the next level. I was born and raised in the heart of the ghetto, my people, for real. I grew up in the Avalon Park community and the Henry on the projects. You ever been so broke you didn't want no money? I've been there. I know people just let that resonate for a minute. But I've been there, okay? But the reality is that God blessed me with the fortitude and the backbone of my ancestors to make something out of my life. I have a master's degree in inner city studies, and I've been around the block a few times. I'm not a perfect candidate. I'm not trying to be politically correct. I'm just trying to get the job done. With the T.O. Hardiman administration, you will have one of the best governors, and I plan to make sure for the first time since Governor Edgar that we have a surplus in the state budget. That has not happened since Governor Edgar. I support the unions. I do not support the right to work. I helped raise $40 million for the University of UIC School of Public Health when I used to run ceasefire. So I know how to manage budgets. I used to manage budgets of $10 to $20 million. I've met with people on the world level. I've been in conferences with David Cameron when he was the Prime Minister over in London. That means I come from royalty just like everybody else. Okay, we all the same people. I just want to make that clear. But my 2020 plan is on my website, hardlenmedia.org, and my message is simple. My whole campaign slogan is let's straighten it out. That's by a legendary blues singer by the name of Alderwoman. Let's straighten it out for those who know what I'm talking about. Let me straighten out Illinois for the working class and poor people, which represents 99% of the population in Illinois. And I want to be the governor, the first African-American governor of the state of Illinois. I want y'all to help me make history, not just because I'm black, but because I'm qualified. Thank you.
Does anybody here think that there's going to be a real fight in the general election against Bruce Rauner? There's going to be a real fight. The question is, are you ready for the fight? Are you ready for the fight? Well, I mean, are you ready for a fight? Because it's going to be tough. This general election is going to be awfully tough. Once we pick a Democratic nominee, we all need to pull together. Every single person on this stage is more qualified and would make a better governor than Bruce Rauner. I am not said a cross word about any one of my opponents in this campaign. It's important to me that we pull together and unify, whoever the nominee is. I hope I'll be it, but whoever it is, whether they're on this stage or didn't show up tonight, it's important that we pull together. We've got to unite as a party. We've got to stand together. The divisions of the party should not break us apart. Now, Bruce Rauner, what did he do? He wrote himself a $50 million check into his campaign account, raised $20 million raised from one man, Ken Griffin, and he's going to get tens of millions of dollars from the Koch brothers network to support his campaign. Fine. We Democrats don't win that way. We win with grassroots campaigns. We win by knocking on doors. I've been knocking on doors since I was 11 years old for progressive Democratic candidates with my parents. My mother took me out advocating, don't tell, he's not here. We were advocating for Teddy Kennedy when I was 11 years old. I want you to know that, ladies and gentlemen, as Democrats, we need to stand up for our values. We need to fight for civil rights, and apparently we need to fight for civil rights in this country, right? We discovered that over the last 4 days, if not over the last 40 years. But we also need to stand up for working families. Springfield needs someone who will advocate for working families. And Juliana Stratton and I will be your team to stand up for you, people striving to get to the middle class and rebuilding the safety net in this state. Thank you very much.
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having some guy from outside of Cook County greet you tonight. I enjoyed being here, enjoyed meeting a lot of you, for you to get to know who I am, okay? A couple things I didn't tell you about me. First of all, my wife and I have been married for 25 years, and she's campaigned with me for 26. And she told me something. Don't be home if you're going to do this. Because we're in this for one reason, that's to win. Okay? So I want you to know something about why I should be the nominee. Is because I draw the greatest contrast to Bruce Rauner. Middle-class guy, been a public school teacher, born and raised in a farm family, and has remained a middle-class person his entire life. Done public service for 38 years, okay? And understands how to govern. Governing is an art. It's an art of understanding how to get along with people, how to compromise, and how to collaborate. This guy doesn't get it because he never did it, okay? Now, you know, Mitch McConnell said something really remarkable last week. He said to his Republican senators, he said, you know that we have got a president that really doesn't understand our work because he never did do it with us. Think about what he said. Now, you need to have a governor that understands local government. Someone like myself that's been there for over 20 years, done the grunt work in the communities, that knows what all people on city councils, county commissioners, people who serve in township government do each and every day to help working class people. On March 21st, I'm the guy that signed a pledge in the United States that said no to right to work. And it resonated in Texas. They're trying to overthrow it. We will not have it in Colorado. We will stand up for working people the entire way. I, as I told you, was a president of a local, paid union dues for 28 years, and continue to bargain contracts today. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much for being here. This was such an important discussion. It was such an honor to be a part of it. We've got such a choice ahead of us, such a decision ahead of us, a decision about the Democratic Party, but a decision about the future of the state of Illinois. We have been telling ourselves for way too long that we can't do what we know we ought to do, that we can't afford what we know we deserve because we're just broke. This is the election where we can decide that's not true. This is the election where we can decide the money is there in our economy if we're willing to get it from the people who bought our elections and use it for the rest of us. This is the election where we can decide that we're not going to have public schools for a few, we're going to have public schools for everyone, but we're not going to have tax laws written by a few for themselves, we're going to have tax laws for the rest of us. The most important thing, this is the election where we get to figure out what the Democratic Party is going to be. in trouble. We're in trouble. We've got Donald Trump in the White House and Bruce Brown in the governor's mansion. We got Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, and let's not even talk about the court system. We got Republican governors and state legislatures across the country, and the Democratic Party's flat on its back, and we're going to decide how we will rise up. Are we going to rise up as the party of billionaires, or are we going to rise up as the party of the middle class? Are we going to rise up as the corporate party, or are we going to rise up as the people's party? Are we going to say, I guess we have no choice. I guess we're just not going to have elections anymore. We're just going to have auctions. Or are we going to say, it's time to take power back for us. It's time for the people to hold the power. It's time to build a government that works for the rest of us. I'm Daniel Biss. I'm running for governor to build a government that works for the rest of us, and I would be honored and privileged to work and fight alongside you every single day of the week to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for coming tonight. You guys were great. And I just want to say thank you for, all 5 of you, for coming to the 10th Ward. Thank you for really caring enough to come down here and let the people know what your views and your opinions are. For the people that didn't show up, shame on them. At least we know that you guys care. So thank you. Again, it's very important because we have been forgotten for too long. So you guys sitting in the seats know it means a lot to us. Thank you. I need to give a shout out to the hall that we sit in. I know JB made a reference to this, but I want you to never forget that this is where 11 steelworkers died trying to form a union. And it's hallowed ground. They lost their life fighting for what we have today. Never forget that. I need to thank the moderators. Some of the best and the greatest the 10th Ward has to offer. Volunteers that have made tonight happen. Sound team, Julio, thank you so much. My staff, where are you?